Hi everybody, I'm Jonathan McQuillan from Anderson Bell Christie Architects. I think for the purpose of this talk, I wanted to actually entertain the thought of building 30 million new homes over the period of 20 years. Actually, is that even possible, and what does that mean? So I went right back, and this is our office in about 1860. It used to be a bakery, and that's the Great Western Road, and Woodlands is missing. So it's amazing the pace of change that has actually happened in Glasgow. And I think that's something that we can look to actually, because when you look to what you could do in 30 years, so that's Glasgow in 1860, that's the West End, Ward 11. Glasgow 1895, so just 35 years later, the scale and pace of change is just phenomenal. So it's been done before. That level of building can be done, and that is high quality construction. Today, this is, if you go down the M77 past Silverburn, just to use a quote from earlier, it's a massive turkey Twizzler next to Silverburn there. So we've got a housing estate by a private house builder. But 67% of what was built in Scotland last year in terms of housing was from private house builders. Significant shifts since 1860. Obviously, there's some major things. The Euclidean planning system has been a real issue. It's a legacy issue, and we're seeing that in the private house builders. The shift in retail, so it's hollowed out our town centres, but it's also changed the way work happens in Scotland, everywhere else. And then factors for the future. This is going to just continue to generate different types of change that we need to consider. And I think sociability and well-being are actually two of the key themes that we really need to look to for the future of housing developments and how we're actually approaching things from now on. Sorry, I thought I had more to say on that one. So we've got, there's 3 projects in the office at the moment which I thought were kind of relevant to those themes. So, you know, if we were to race off and build 30 million homes in that time frame, like what do we actually need to crack? And I think reimagining mixed use, because we know retail has changed, and here we are. Mixed use, you think about mixed use, you traditionally go to a mix of residential plus something. Traditionally, it would have been small retail and small businesses, but those models are broken. We cannot use those models anymore, so where do we look to for the future? So this is Edinburgh, and I was looking at public assets. This is Gracemount. Each of those circles is a different public building, and they're actually so far apart you can't even walk between the buildings, and none of the buildings are interconnected. So actually, when we're talking about austerity in the UK and actually how we're using our funds, considering how we actually approach mixed use, I think is quite important. So this is a development that we've been looking at where we're looking to mix a few of the community assets with residential and actually do it in a way that keeps it compact as a node within an urban centre and actually links up with all of the existing infrastructure. So up at the top, you'll see the yellow circle, that's where we're putting our node, and we're making sure it's really well linked and walkable distance to all other parts of the community. And so I think what's key for any site is to look well beyond your site boundary and actually make sure that everything links up with everything else. And make sure complementary public services, so we're talking about older folks home above a nursery and a GP centre, so these are complementary services with a community centre in between. So actually these are all things that can begin to interact and actually offer a much more robust, much stronger offering to the community. Health and wellbeing and regeneration, this is Clydebank at Queen's Quay. John Brown Shipyards is the reason pretty much that Clydebank is there, but it's also the reason that there's a huge amount of social deprivation and ill health in Clydebank. So whenever we're considering what's going to happen on this site, so a huge amount of new housing, etc. going in. So there's about 1,500 new homes to go into the site. But the core of the site is to be a health quarter. And what this is going to see is actually the centre move from where it is at the moment with the shopping centre in Clydebank down to the actual waterfront. And this is the health centre we're working on. And I think what's quite poetic about this is that Western Berkshire Council have actually thought about it and thought that actually for the future of Clydebank, for the message that we want to give everybody in Clydebank is that it's now about health and well-being as at the centre of the new town centre of Clydebank. So again, for this project, we've looked well beyond our site boundary. Like, we're really just talking about this part of our site here. But we've gone well beyond it to actually make sure that every part of the public infrastructure is meshed with the rest of Clydebank, so that when you're coming down from the town centre, if you're an existing resident in town, Clydebank, that actually you feel part of that community. Ganachie, so this is about lifetime neighbourhoods. This is an estate in Perth and Kinross. A huge number of these homes, incredibly successful. The families that are in these have lived there all of their lives, and they've got to a point actually where there's a really large ageing community. We're extending the estate, but when we're extending the estate, it's not just a bolt-on. This is actually designed in a way that we're trying to provide the variety of size of homes that we can actually allow people in the existing estate to downsize or right-size into these homes and allow new families who actually maybe can't afford the other ones to get in as well. And it's about how we treat the spaces between buildings is vitally important. And for a lifetime neighbourhood, creating different types of ownership of space in between the buildings, and that's an example of where we've done it in practice, but that makes an absolutely enormous difference to the communities. We've created community gardens in a number of our projects, and that's been hugely successful for actually getting a lot of community engagement and getting the neighbours to know each other. So that was, the middle one is Govan, so that's built and has been brilliant. And that's the last one's in the Shield Centre, which is a health centre. So we've actually managed to link community growing with health and well-being and actually getting the community into the health centre as well. So for the future, I think well-being and sociability needs to be embedded in new developments. I think we need to support our planning authorities more to implement policies, because actually the policies are already there, it's just that they can't be enforced. And improved interdepartmental, interagency, because we need the council to work together internally. Thanks.